are you doing?
I'm doing well.
That's wonderful.
There we go, Mr. Greg.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good
morning.
morning.
Hey, Kelly, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing great. Doing great.
Good. It's good to see you.
Good to be seen.
You on mute, Tom?
Good morning. Is Nefertiti here yet?
Not yet. I'll text her and let her know we're back in.
Yeah, I'm texting her too.
Okay.
So you just all saw the runner show. We'll just go through that, breeze through that. It's a conversational flow. I'll ask, leave some questions. I may have some follow-up questions based on your comment and your feedback from a previous response, and we'll make sure I make the rounds. But the first and foremost first thing will be introduction. And I'm after Synovia introduce and kick us off. But you just want to make sure everyone understands who you are, what organization you are with, and what services that you offer in the housing arena, and things that you could help the community folks with, either as an individual or other community groups. Avis, can you tell me if this light is too much or if I
dim it just a little? And
Just-
Nefertiti had to
just a
reboot
little,
her computer.
Yeah, I can't see let me see. So I'm at my daughter's house this morning and she kind of got a different
Set up.
And I can't go this way because she is putting a barn door on her closet. And so she got stuck in there.
You're good.
Okay.
Good.
All right, there's Nefertiti.
All right, we want to get started before we lose some people.
Yes.
I think so, yes.
I have another Synovia. I want to get that name right, but I'm not sure who that is.
Nefertiti.
Okay. Okay, did I get that right? I think we're good to go. We're recording and we're live.
Well, good morning, Austin, and welcome to the Austin Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated Economic Development Committee webinar, Affordable Housing 101. With the current housing crisis that has reached unfathomable proportions, not only in Austin, but across the US, we thought it would be good to bring forth an esteemed panel to have a conversation today around affordability. We have a dynamic panel for you today to provide not only definitions, but how affordable housing can be developed in an equitable manner, as well as understanding a developer's viewpoint so that you as Austinites and as members of the sorority can advocate for more affordable housing. My co-chair and I, Avis Gibson, would like to present now the panel. This morning, we have Nefertiti Jackman, Displacement Prevention Officer for the City of Austin, Kelly Coleman, Interim Equity Officer for the City of Austin, as well as Greg Smith, President and CEO of Austin Revitalization. Our moderator for today is Dr. Tamla Saldana, who is the Assistant Director for Small Minority Business Resource Department, as well as Interim Civil Rights Officer, who will guide our discussion today. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Tamla.
Thank you so much, Zenobia. Good morning. Good morning to the panelists and Austin and our attendees. We are excited to present to you today this wonderful panel who is very knowledgeable, has a lot of expertise in their respective areas. So at this time, what I would like to do is the panelists to just introduce yourself and provide an overview of your organization, as well as your services that impact the Austin area. And so let's start with who I see to my first, to my right, my partner in crime is Kelly Coleman.
All right, thank you, Dr. Saldana. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kelly Coleman. She, her pronouns. I am the interim chief equity officer for the city of Austin. In the equity office, we provide guidance to leaders in the community and internally to the city around how racism impacts outcomes in our communities. So whether it's disparate outcomes in health, whether it's around homelessness, or whether it's around transportation, we intervene and have conversations, provide support and development around trying to reduce those disparities and create more positive outcomes for communities of color specifically. So, good morning. I would say some of the services that we provide, we do provide some programs like the Guaranteed Income Program that was piloted this year. That program provides $1,000 to 135 families in the Austin area for a year. And that's in a pilot phase now, but that we don't provide a lot of external services, but we do provide tons of consultation and spaces for people to get involved and push on the city a little bit. So, good morning.
All right, well, we're going to break it up a little bit and let the gentlemen get in here and offer some information about their service. Greg, good to see you.
Good morning to you guys. How you? My name is Greg Smith. I'm the president and CEO of the Austin Revitalization Authority. We've been in existence for about 27 years now. We own and operate about 65,000 square feet of office and retail space, as well as taking a renewed focus on the affordable housing, where we are providing rental housing for folks income qualified. But our primary focus area is the Colony Park Lakeside area. In addition to, we're looking at developing homeownership housing both in the Lakeside as well as the St. John's neighborhood.
Okay, thank you, Greg. And we'll have some more questions about that rental assistance program. Nefertiti, please.
Good morning, everybody. It's good to be here, and thank you for inviting me. My name is Nefertiti Jackman. I serve as the City of Austin's Community Displacement Prevention Officer in the Housing Department. And that department, or division, our area is really tasked with understanding the displacement pressures in Austin, recognizing that many primarily African-American residents have already faced displacement in Austin, but understanding the dynamics and the impacts to communities of color and other vulnerable residents throughout the Austin area. Our primary focus, I like to say, we look at two different ways of doing our work, and first and foremost are what I call our strategic investments. And our strategic investments are designed to invest in community members where there has not been an investment, to make sure that they are stabilized, that they can face greater stabilization. So that includes designing programs and services for community members, and then also opening up opportunities for vendors and community-based organizations to provide services, contracting directly with us. So that's our first focus. And then we look at more long-term strategies, planning policy decisions to make a more long-term impact to prevent further displacement in the city of Austin. So thank you.
Well, goodness. Well, you all touched on a very important thing, and that's people need assistance. They really do need assistance. And what I found as in my part-time stint here at the Office of Civil Rights is that people don't understand where to go to get assistance. There's a lot out there. I know people often call the Office of Civil Rights looking for housing, and we do not provide housing at the Office of Civil Rights. We investigate housing complaints where you as a resident may have been discriminated against on the virtue of your ethnicity, your race, or gender, or sexual status. And so one of the things that I was hoping one of you all, and it sounds like Mr. Smith and Nefertiti, if you and Kelly, just being the resources you are, there's a lot of housing assistance programs out there. Can you name maybe each of you one or two that are very specific that either your organization offers that consist with housing or one that you are aware of so that people who are needing housing assistance and are displaced can get those services?
Okay, sure. I will start. I'm going to do three, but I'm going to go quick. One, I would definitely want to tell people to go to United Way has a website. It's called Connect ATX. I think it's one of the easiest sites to go to, and it provides a wide range of resources for community members, housing as well as other resources, and you can put in your zip code. So that's one. The other program we have is I Belong in Austin. I Belong in Austin is a program that we will be continuing. We have partnered with El Buen in the past. It started during COVID to provide rental assistance, emergency rental assistance. And then also, if you're facing eviction, we have what's called funds for negotiated settlement. So if your attorneys reach an agreement, oftentimes people will face eviction because they can't come up with the money to pay. So that's included. And in the case you are evicted, what we do is in that fund, there is also money for moving and storage, because sometimes that is the outcome. I mean, we can't, even with representation, we can't prevent all evictions, but that money will ensure that people who are facing challenges do not continue to be penalized because they are poor, or don't have the financial resources available at that time. So it's eviction, it's moving, storage, negotiated settlements, and we're really thankful to have that program set up.
Thank you. I'm hoping someone can assist in writing those resources down and actually put them in the chat. That would be awesome. Look at our Director of Economic Development and our she's already on it, and our Chair of Economic Development, because I do want people to make sure that they have that information. Greg, look like you off mute. Do you have any offerings for people?
Well, what I would just say is we actually provide housing and try and provide those that are in great need. As we're developing our portfolio of units, 2-bedroom units, we find we've partnered with Urban League, who is providing transitional housing assistance to house folks into units. So we're making our units available in partnership with Urban League as well as with the Housing Authority. Because we'll accept vouchers, and our goal is, as we buy these units, we'll renovate those things. And I actually personally go through those things and develop those in such a way that I say, this is a place that I would feel comfortable living. But so ours is actually delivering the units for those that are looking for housing can get that assistance.
Greg, can you talk a little bit about the timeline when those units will be available and exactly where they're located in Austin? I know we may have some folks that are not in the Austin area, but it would be helpful for them to know exactly where the locations are and the timeline for those units to be developed.
Well, right now, I'm working in the Colony Park Lakeside area. That is in Far East Austin. It's really adjacent to the 200 acres that is being planned to be developed by Catalyst. And we're focusing that area primarily due to the fact of that potential development, where once this get developed, you're going to have the have and the have-nots. We've already have investors moving into the area to take advantage of these multifamily units to make those into market. So we're going in buying fourplexes and duplexes, renovating those, and then making those available to folks at 50% MFI and below. And in partnership with Urban League and the Housing Authority, really makes those things work. We also have, we have about 2, possibly 3 units that are available right now that are currently being renovated and making those available to for rental.
Thank you. Kelly, do you have any?
I was just gonna share about Travis County doing utility assistance, and I think it's important to highlight because we know through some research that our innovation office did a while back that folks who are most likely to be displaced usually have their electricity cut off, in the year prior, and so at least one time, and so it's a good indication, right? And so if you need help paying your electricity bill or a utility bill, Travis County provides that support. And I also wanted to just share about a program that hasn't started yet, but that we are working actually with housing. It's not housing and planning anymore, but the housing folks with the land trust. A woman named Shonda Gaither is over that program, the land trust program, the right to return program is what we call it. And she has we're helping with about 20 families through an organization called Living Cities, and Up Together to do cash assistance directly to those families who have qualified and are getting into those homes that the city is selling to them, so that they'll be more stable when they get in and will be able to stay in those homes. So
Thanks, Kelly. So one of the things that we hear often is that there are a lot of programs out there, and you all have streamlined a lot of those resources for our participants today. But one of the things we have heard is that it is so hard to get on the list. The list fills up very quickly, or some of the lists are actually closed. So with your expertise, where would be the best scenario for someone to go, organization that really needs rental assistance or these electric bills, assistance with services? Where is a one-stop shop? Because you all have said Urban League, you've said Goodwill, Salvation Army, and I think people get just overwhelmed when they're looking for, and they need it right then and there. They have this stuff in their hand. So where would you offer a one-stop shop place to get some services?
I will say, I know there is no one-stop shop, just to be honest. And I think that's good. I know it's confusing. And I will say there's a couple of things I'll say. One of the things we've just launched with Council Member Vanessa Fuentes of District 2 and Council Member Harper Madison of District 1, we launched a program called the Displacement Prevention Navigator Program. So what the navigators will do, because like you said, Dr. Saldana, finding and identifying resources and knowing how to walk through the process to get the resources can be hard, complicated, and overwhelming, especially if you're in a crisis. So one of the things that we are doing, we are starting in 2 districts, and we're going to narrow it down to the specific neighborhoods, but in Colony Park and Dove Springs, which it will further be narrowed. But our navigator programs, we're looking for people in the community, from these communities, preferably, but not only, preferably who have a desire to help people apply for resources, find out what resources are available. And sometimes people have challenges with technology, right? And, a variety of things. Some people don't even have emails. And so oftentimes the programs are very, they're mostly online, just to be honest. And a lot of programs don't have paper applications anymore. So our navigator programs, really, to me, I see them as customer service representatives. So we are going into the community and we will inform people about the various resources that are available to them, and we will help them apply for these services. So even if you have challenges getting to different sites, the goal is to go to the community, find out what the needs are, and then the navigators, our desires for them to also let us know what barriers continue to exist, like what challenges are they finding in the city, so we can remove those barriers. And then I'll say one other piece. We're also working with a number of different agencies to see if we can develop a single application for individuals who need assistance through the city. And so we're just starting this. And because people are saying the same thing, and there are some cities, San Antonio was one during COVID, they had one single application. And then so people can sort of figure out what their needs are, but they don't have to go to the health department and apply for, and then go to EDD and then go to the housing department. So we're trying to see what is the possibility of having a single application, and then internally city staff direct these applications to the right departments based on the needs of the individuals. So
that sounds like an awesome idea. Any tips from you, Greg?
Well, actually, Nefertiti really hit the hammer on top of the nail in terms of this navigator concept, because it really has been evolving. During the pandemic, my organization, we worked closely with the Economic Development Department, and we became, I think we became community champions initially, where we assisted nonprofits, organizations to access some of the pandemic funds that were coming through the city. Then it evolved. We did that for a couple of years, and then it evolved into we're brought on we're a community navigator ourselves, our organization, to assist organizations, again, partnering with the Economic Development Department to assist nonprofits and creatives to access funding that the department is putting out there for solicitation. So this iteration of what Nefertiti is talking about is getting even further into the neighborhood by actually, we're an entity that works in the community, because folks will feel more comfortable asking folks that look like them that they can relate to for that type of assistance. And so Nefertiti is taking that step further, is getting someone that works in the neighborhood as an individual navigator to assist folks through the city's maze. So I really want to ditto that and see how we can get behind that to move that even further.
Well, that's awesome. I know Delta has a social action focus as well as an economic development focus. And we have a lot of members out there in our organization that are involved in other organizations. They serve in various capacities in the communities. How can other organizations like Delta, like Links, Alpha Kappa Alpha, Kappa Omegas, any organization and individuals do to help advocate for our community and for developers who want to create affordable housing? And I'm going to start with Nefertiti with that question.
This time I was going to defer to my colleagues, and so, but I do have something I do want to share, but I was going to go after them. But thank you. One of the things I wanted to share about this is Greg mentioned Colony Park, that development that's happening there. There is also Project Connect, and I will share a link. One of the things that I would like to see is more members from our communities speaking up and providing input. And I know it's challenging. Austin, there's also often this tension in terms of, I know oftentimes community members provide their input through the years, they have many times, and their voices are often not heard, right? And so people get frustrated and people get fatigued and people have many other priorities. But when these development projects are being planned, we really need community members to lend their voices. If they see, like Project Connect is a big one right now, and they're asking for feedback. And I'll share the links. Also, Zenobia is doing a great job, and others are putting the links in the chat. But I think one of the biggest ones is you don't have to go to every meeting, but sometimes show up. Find which opportunities you can show up and speak at council, like stay engaged. And I know, because I hear it from community members, and it's a very legitimate concern. I don't have the capacity to do that. But if I tell you, if our voices are not heard, there are other people, especially other people in other communities who often get the resources that our communities that don't come to our community. So we really need voices at City Council and on the Speak Up Austin page again. And I think the engagement, the city has to do a better job of being intentional about reaching communities that we need to hear from. But I would say number one is your voice. We need your voice, especially when these plans are being developed. And that's critical at the beginning and less so at the end, because at the beginning, that's when all of the plans are being formalized. And then I would say, lastly, about the developers, we need more ARAs. Austin Revitalization Authorities, we need more Black and Brown developers. One of the things that we are also launching is a capacity builder training for people who are interested in affordable housing. So what we don't have, and it's hard, development is not easy. It's not, and Greg could talk about that. Development is not easy, and it is not for everybody. But if we have for-profit developers out there and people who are not concerned with how our communities are shaped, we need to create spaces and opportunities for people who care about what I call conscious development, right? And those are not, and I know Greg, I was going to say people who are not concerned with profits, but Greg is concerned about profits. So, and that makes sense. You have to be, because you can't go into business to lose money, but we need developers who care about our communities and what they look like. And so we need to bring more developers into the space. And so I'll say this finally, one of the things we're doing is capacity building training for not-for-profit developers to be able to make sure they have the tools and resources to be successful in the Austin market.
Can I follow Nefertiti?
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yes.
So I want to ask Nefertiti, did the capacity builder piece come about? Did like the city just say, oh, wow, we want to build capacity of developers of color? Or could it have been because community, people directly impacted by displacement, pushed really hard and created a tool, nothing for us without us, around the Project Connect anti-displacement dollars, which is it was $300 million set aside to keep people from being displaced, because they knew that this investment that has gone from 8 billion to over 10, I believe, very quickly, was going to displace people. And in Austin, based on the Uprooted study that you can find on UT, it's a UT developed tool that tells you what neighborhoods are most likely to be displaced and which ones have been displaced and to what level, right? Just being Black is the most reliable indicator of being displaced in Austin. That's something that we have to think about. That's something that you know, I think is really important to share. But with what Nefertiti is talking about, building the capacity so that we have some Black developers, some brown developers that understand our communities and how much we care and love our communities. It's super important, but I believe, and Nefertiti, correct me if I'm wrong, that the reason we have this program is because of the pressure that we got from the outside, from directly impacted communities saying, hey, we want people that look like us, that are from our neighborhoods, to be developing our neighborhoods. Is that correct? Is that?
I think it's a little bit, almost, yes. I will say it came out actually before the equity tool, but it was part of the recommendations from the various task force around displacement. So in that case, you are correct, because it wasn't that our department said, oh, we need to invest in more developers. It was from the community and the recommendations that have been coming out, and then the equity tool. And I'll put a link in that as well to the racial equity anti-displacement tool that Kelly references. It just confirmed that is definitely needed to have builders in our community that care, and how do we prioritize to ensure that they have access to funding as well? And what is the process that they go through to determine if this is a development that is desired by the communities where this development is going to happen? So that is true. It builds off of, and it is, again, I think anything, and this is what goes back to the statement earlier about being involved, anything that is happening that is progressive in our city, it didn't come from some great idea by a city staffer. The equity office, the Office of Civil Rights, the displacement office, all of these offices and positions that you see, they were as a result of an ongoing organizing and a demand from city residents, right? And so I think that's another reason why it is important to keep community involved and hear from them. That's how we get to where we are now.
Yes. So you got in your responses, you all have brought up a lot of terms and a couple of topics that I want to make sure that all of our listeners are aware of what those things are. One, let me just take a moment, a pause, and make sure we had a couple of comments and questions that came in. All of the resources that we have talked about, and we spent the first part of this segment talking a lot about rental assistance and programs for people who are displaced or need housing issues and have housing issues and need services. And we have been dropping those resources in the chat. Someone asked, where can I find that information? You can actually see that in the chat. They've been doing a really good job of putting that information and links in the chat. And so you all have been talking about development, and that's moving away from, we're still intertwining things about housing, but moving toward now maybe people who have some type of resources to who are willing to step up to the plate and have that consciousness in their development ideas, but they don't know what that is necessarily. They may have a 10-acre plot of land and say, hey, can I do something with this? And so I'm going to ask Greg, can you talk a little bit about, since you're in that space, where you can find tools and classes and resources, particularly as we have different folks on here about becoming a developer and what that is and how you get involved in that process, if you would like to.
Well, thank you. I would say, I guess Nefertiti, she's really the big kahuna here in addressing a lot of the questions that you're asking. But there's for years, my organization has taken just kind of a personal interest and has this saying that we've learned that there's a lot of Black folks that are land rich but knowledge poor. And what we've had folks come into our office with just that land and not sure what to do with it. And I've sat down with folks. I always have stories to tell, and this one I would tell you. There's this lady actually came to our office that was about to lose her house because they were about to foreclose. Mortgage about to foreclose on it. Her mortgage interest rate was around almost 10%, and this was about 4 years ago. And she didn't have a job. But what she did have was an asset that had a lot of equity in it that the mortgage company would have loved to have taken away from her and then sold on the open market. And so what we did was we sat down with the lady who had lived in this house for 30 years. She came to the realization that she could no longer own a house and was ready to move into the rental market. Now, that's a big decision to make after you live and raise a child in that house. And so after she came to that realization, we really did assist her. And this is what we did. She didn't have a job, so we actually provide some living expenses for her for several months, for her to come to the realization and find a place that she needed to relocate to. Once she found a place to relocate, we assisted her in relocating to that house, paid for it all, paid for the rent. We then went in and helped her identify a general contractor because she trusts nobody. But we helped her identify, we let her choose a general contractor of her choosing. We acted as the project manager and funded the interior renovation of that property, underwrote that entire thing. Then we assist her. She identified her own real estate agent that she put the house on the market for sale. Within 7 days, she got over $100,000 more in asking price. Once she sold the house, she reimbursed us everything we gave her and walked away with over $100,000. Put her in a house where she's rental and she's just as happy as nobody did. So that's just one example of some of the things that we've done. But again, land rich but knowledge poor, and they were about to lose that. So those are the nuances that my organization, when they find those unique opportunities, love to try to assist folks. We don't try to market that because people be beat down the door.
Yeah.
But I have stories like that I can tell.
Okay, Nefertiti, can you tell us about any of the workshops that you mentioned or how people can get involved in the capacity and developing area?
Sure, I will. I want to just follow up on what Greg said about having land and but not having the financial resources like that to maintain and hold on to the property. So that is a real problem in why we often lose our property. So displacement, and then I call land loss, and I say land theft, because it's all of that. All of that often happens, but we need more organizations like an ARA. And Greg and I talked about that case before they got involved, and it was good to hear that someone could walk away with some money rather than losing everything and walk away with nothing, right? Which is too often the case. So I did put We're having a Black Land Matters Symposium this June 15th. It's important because our people in the past purchased land and property as a way to represent their freedom. Like that signified freedom for them. And I'll just say, and I hope I don't go off, there is a move by many people to get us comfortable with all becoming renters. And I'm not saying renting is not bad. That's sometimes renting, that is not bad or good, right? It just is whatever people choose to do. But what's important to me is that we provide choices and make sure people have choices to either be renters or homeowners and give them the opportunity. And home ownership and land ownership, to me, like I said, it represented freedom for people who were formerly enslaved. One of the first things that many of them did and that they worked toward was saving their money so that they could buy property, so they could be more determined, self-determined, and have the economic outcomes or freedom for their families. So I say that because I've been in panels like this where there's been disagreements around, well, why are we promoting home ownership? We should be talking about expanded tenants' rights. That is good. And I think we should have more tenants' rights. I'm not opposed to it. But just because home ownership was not this big economic generator or a wealth building opportunity for African-American families as it was for white families, and the only reason it was not was because of the institutional racism that existed that did not allow us to generate wealth, right? From the bad loans, from the segregated and redline communities. So those are some of the reasons why we were not able to use home ownership in the down payment assistance programs that were not provided to us as they were provided to other members of society. So I think we have to be careful when people are trying to advocate something that they're saying is on our behalf, but it's less than what they have. And we should question when people are saying they represent us and they are representing our communities, but they're homeowners, but they're trying to say, well, homeownership isn't the end goal. Let people be self-determined and determine that for themselves. So I think I want some, and it's some of us as well. So we should be careful about the narratives that we begin to say around ownership. And I was supposed to be given a tip about a class. There is I will say this, the capacity building class is not yet set up. That information will be available. I did put in the organization that we have contracted with, and I know has gone to council, so I'm comfortable sharing that. It's Capital Impact Partners. So I put their link to everyone in here. They've done work with Black and Brown developers in DC, in Detroit. And so we're contracting with them here in Austin to do that work. As soon as that becomes available, I'm sorry, I know this will be over, but I will share all of those opportunities with Synovia so she can share them with your group.
Great. Now, I know that we talked a little bit about this, and I know people just hang on. I'm seeing the chat blowing up. We talked about, like I said, homelessness and and rental assistance, and we're definitely going to talk about home ownership. And I thank you for your comments, Nefertiti, because it is a gateway to economic freedom and economic security. So we are going to talk about some home ownership programs shortly. I want to ask those that are helping our technology team and our co-chairs here. People are stating that some of the links, if they have joined a little late, they may not be seeing all of the links that were previously shared earlier. And so if we could take an opportunity of someone from technology to just help us add those links back into the chat, that will be helpful for those people who joined us late, because it's a wealth of resources in that chat, and I don't want people to miss it. One of the things that I know Kelly, in all of the studies that your office have done, talked about the connections of different opportunities and how one factor and one variable plays a role in the other. And I know Nefertiti and you as well, Greg, have done a lot around Project Connect. And I think the community, there's folks who's what is that? It has nothing to do with me, but there is a direct linkage in understanding some of the development projects and what was going on and where these developers are coming and buying land, et cetera. Can you give an overview of what your knowledge is of Project Connect, the importance of it to Black and Brown communities, and how they can get more information about Project Connect? Let's start with you, Greg.
Okay, my work with Project Connect, is taking advantage of the program, this anti-displacement acquisition program the City of Austin created. And we're utilizing that to assist us with our focus in the Colony Park Lakeside area in terms of stabilizing affordable housing there. We thus far have received the first reimbursements of the funds under that program, where we purchased a fourplex and done the renovations of it. In addition to that, we've partnered with Aquadad and utilized the Project Connect dollars to purchase a vacant lot that we are planning to build at least 3 to 4 homeownership houses in the Lakeside area. So we're working not only on the homeownership side, but on the rental side, but also the homeownership side. And there's some opportunities that we're looking at in the St. John's neighborhood. All of these fall under those areas that are subject under the uprooted reports, where there's high gentrification that can take place there. But that's our involvement with the Project Connect.
Thank you, Greg. Nefertiti?
Okay, I will share that one of the first, and I won't go into this, I'm going to share it. I'm going to give a little bit and then pass it on to Kelly, but we work with the Equity Office to develop the equity tool. It's the Racial Equity Anti-Displacement tool, to develop a process to inform, or a tool to help us inform how the $300 million will be spent for Project Connect. And so the $300 million related to Project Connect is to help prevent the displacement of vulnerable communities, which is often the case. That's what generally happens when you have transit-oriented development. The idea and the goal of Project Connect is to help the city of Austin be more connected through transportation, recognizing that transportation costs can often be a significant portion of a family's income, right? Can take up a lot of their income. But historically, we have seen how transportation projects have divided communities. Like, you think of I-35 and many other highways. It was almost like a plan throughout the country. Highways helped to segregate Black communities from the larger majority white community, and it was very intentional, right? So we have seen how communities have been cut off from economic opportunities. Project Connect is touted to be different. It's touted to be transformational, and we are. I will say what is different is the $300 million, but that can't be the only piece that is different. And when I say it's different, we're thinking about displacement at the front end. Oftentimes, these transportation projects happen. And we think about how to prevent the displacement of residents after the displacement has already occurred, right? So that is one way that Project Connect is significantly different. But the goal and the idea is to make sure that residents have access to transit near affordable housing, near daycare, and other resources that they need. So we have what's called, it's an ETOD, equitable transit oriented development, where the planners are working with community to involve them in the planning process and understand what their needs are, and then also making sure that we have multi-use stops right along and housing along the transit rail within like a half mile, right? And I'll stop here, but then we're trying to make sure we prevent displacement much larger. Like, so we're looking at within a mile radius, understanding what's walkable for people. So, but I think Kelly would have a lot to share about how we developed the tool, which was not an easy process. And it's still not easy as we're continuing to hold on to that work and have that work serve as a guide for the 300 million investment.
Thank you, Kelly. Yes, please. I'm gonna follow up with another question for you, but
Okay.
please add comments on Project Connect.
Sure. So the anti-displacement tool that Nefertiti is sharing about, she also put the link in the chat for it. We worked with between 25 and 30 individuals in our community that were facing displacement or had been displaced. And we spent time with those folks training and developing their analysis around systems and around sort of city process, and really trying to just build leadership with those folks, and brought in some planners from outside of the city who had experience doing more sort of social justice oriented planning. We worked with them to develop this tool, really with these 30 individuals, to develop this tool and the priorities and the values and principles that they're rooted in. And it's interesting because just because you put an E on the front of transit-oriented development does not all of a sudden make it so, right? Doesn't necessarily mean it's equitable. And we have to ask ourselves, like, I'm excited about the work that that Greg is doing with having this 300 million that Nefertiti talked about on the front end. But now that the plan has been changing, when we first started with Project Connect as a large project, there were promises made about who would benefit from this program, from this investment. And now we're seeing things sort of be pulled back because of other things that have come up, like trying to get a federal match, trying to get just other pieces. And we've sort of seen the equity piece of Project Connect go away. I don't even think the word is included in the new plan anymore. And so it's really important that we be accountable as city folks, and that people, our constituents, hold us accountable and hold us to what we said we would do. There are folks who are transportation dependent, right? Bus dependent, public transportation dependent, and there are choice riders, right? And right now, from what I've seen, and things change all the time, but it looks like we are prioritizing choice ridership. And although Project Connect is supposed to connect us and hopefully at the end, we will be way more connected and have access to public transportation in ways that we could have never imagined, and things become more efficient and connected. But I think in the process, what's being prioritized as far as a timeline, and right now, is not the communities that were promised what they were promised. I'm just being honest and being real. And we need to think about, and this is where I think, we can also think about all the work that's going to come from this, right? Contracts and things of that nature that our folks need to be in on and need to be looking at and need to be a part of. And so that's what I have to add to that. I do think that the tool was very powerful. And we spent a lot of time, right, Nefertiti, intentional time with just regular folks developing this tool. And we learned a lot in the process. I mean, we had someone who already had been displaced, this young mom who was living in a extended stay hotel with her child and having to take all day buses from way north Austin to way south to go do her like probation check-ins, right? Burleson Road. And her input on what we need was vital, it was foundational. And in the process, we saw her grow and develop. It was incredible watching her shifts, and everything that I learned or we learned from her. So those processes are really necessary.
Kelly, you mentioned, and I want to make sure that our audience is always informed, you mentioned choice ridership. Can you give us exactly what that term means and what that's about?
Choice ridership, the way that I understand it, are people who choose to utilize public transportation, but have other choices, right? People who have choices, people who can drive, people who can work from home, people who, don't require public transportation. And then there's folks who don't have a choice, right? And that's the difference, is people who are absolutely dependent on public transportation, and then those who take it because they want to, they care about climate change. Yeah.
Those kinds of things. Okay. Right. Just want to make sure our community was informed of the difference.
Yes. So they're usually not the folks that have 3 kids on the bus who are going to wash their clothes, it's a lot harder, right? Then you can't get on your bike and ride down there. You can't get on one of those scooters. It's a whole thing. So.
Well, Kelly, I have a question I've been interested in. I know that, information is power, as Greg stated earlier. And I know a lot of folks, many of us have been in Austin for a very long time, but some of us, like you, is a proud Austinite. And we have seen a lot of our East Austin community change. I know there was a comment in the chat talking about, a hotel developed, there's no windows pointing to the east side. And we see our East Austin area, changing rapidly. So I was wondering if you could share some light on the recent study that the Equity Office supported, and think about how the landscape, the flora and fauna of East Austin has changed, and how has the 1928 plan, and many people don't know about that in the areas of redlining. Can you tell us about the work that you have done with the Equity Office and looking at it from a historical standpoint?
Sure. I'm so excited about this study. This actually came about because of a young person in the community who's been doing work in our community forever. His name is Nook, goes by Nook Turner, I believe. He's a part of an organization called it's Black Austin Coalition, I think is what it's called, BAC. And their organization was pushing to get a Black embassy, is what they call it. And so in pushing for the Black Embassy, Nook and the folks that are part of BAC came to City Council and said, hey, we want to know what the cost of dispossession was. We want to know what we have lost, right? And was able to get the mayor to agree and council to agree to a study. And it's not just about the land piece, but it's also about the loss of life, right? And chronic disease and educational loss and different pieces that have contributed to where we are now as a community, right? And he wanted to start from 1928, but we started even earlier. So I shared a link in the chat for Dr. Gordon's website. So Edmund T. Gordon from the University of Texas, who Dr. Saldana said was on her committee for her dissertation, was the chair of Black Studies. I think he started Black Studies
He did.
at UT.
Dr. Warfield did.
Yep. Oh, Dr. Warfield. Okay, my bad, Dr. Warfield. I should know that. But he's a big deal and cares a lot, I think, about the city, and does also these tours, these geography tours around UT to show the Confederate monuments. And so I reached out to him about this study, and it was commissioned as a study and a report outlining the economic value of the direct, indirect, intentional, and unintentional harm caused through economic, health, environmental, criminal injustice, and other racial disparities, and declination of resources by the city. In conjunction with the recently established Equity Office, a team of researchers took up the task of quantifying the cost of Black dispossession due to city policies. And they use a methodology of like historical census and tax records, different historical directories, and contemporary tax assessments to estimate the value of Black land lost. And the first few neighborhoods that they did were after emancipation, and ended that piece in 1930. And that came out to about 290 million. And so Austin back then was a lot smaller. And so I think the neighborhoods they looked at were Red River, West Campus, Wheatville, Clarksville, and there's one more that I can't think of off the top of my head, but I shared the website, and looking at that and looking at finding folks who are either classified as Black or mulatto in the census, and tracking those families, and finding their plots of land, and looking at how much the land was worth then, how much they paid for it, versus how much it would be worth today. And
Wow.
so it's quite a bit of money. And now they're starting to work on 1930 to today, to contemporary, and they're having to sort of shift their methodology because of redlining, because of the 1928 plan. And they're including businesses too in the second half of the study. And so and there's far more people, and Austin, has grown so much. So it'll be an interesting study at the end.
Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah.
So right now, we've been talking a lot about, the history and talking about some of the factors now that are influencing housing and development in the Austin area. And there is a growing concern. We have a member of our chat community that put a question in the Q&A about several of the Texas House bills that are trying to ban diversity, equity, and inclusion programs at the state level on the university campus. You know, we've gone through that before with at the university level with Hopwood. And I'm concerned as we start talking about home ownership and what that means to Black and Brown citizens and how they can get involved in helping improve their opportunities for home ownership. I'm concerned about these programs, like our programs, like, you know, the Austin Area Urban League, those programs and offices that benefit from diversity, equity foundations. Do you all have any comments? What can we talk about that for just a second as we start talking about some additional home ownership programs that will help folks in our community? What can we do as an organization, Delta Sigma Theta and other organizations out there, or individuals that that can have an impact on how our House will vote and the outcomes of these DEI programs? Go ahead, Kelly, or Nefertiti, or Greg.
That's out of my lane, to be honest with you. I just have to share that with you. I do think that it's real interesting what Kelly said earlier about the Project Connect and the fact that the equity tool has kind of vanished from that discussion, because I know there was a big push to hold up funding until that tool was in place. And I knew at one point in time there was a word that you shouldn't talk about the equity tool, and that's really it has kind of faded away. And I would ask them, you know, what can we do? Even my organization, I'm pretty sure NFT always have some idea for me to do something. But
will he say, do you want to tell him what you always tell me? I reach. I'll be looking for help from the community. Okay.
Yeah, and she needs it, you know, and so I guess I'm availing myself to that. You know, what is it that my organization can do to kind of elevate that? Because I do see the impact of, you know, utilizing an equity tool. I mean, we need that. I understand.
Thank you, Greg. I think you have a powerful voice at City Hall. People listen when you speak, and so do the folks. They do. So do the folks on your board, and the people that you help in the community on a regular basis. You know, and it's really important to. I think Sonovia said it really well in the chat, just as a general thing. Y'all are powerful because y'all are Deltas and organized and together. And that's really what we need. Numbers say a lot, but also like I've seen times when y'all show up and all, you know, in your red and people pay attention, right? It's really powerful. And I think that the more that we see of that from a lot of different groups, right? Not just y'all, but the more that we see that or that the state, especially around the ledge, see that people are organized and are showing up and we're paying attention, the shenanigans will either get better or get worse, right? But we still have to engage because they're coming for us, literally. They are coming for us. It has been consistent. It has been well-resourced and well-organized. And call your representatives, call your state senators, we have to call people. I do think that the local government work, the doing work locally is really important and is where the rubber meets the road for families. What we see a lot of in Austin is the state sort of, specifically coming for us as Austin, for whatever reasons, right? And so we're made an example of a lot of times. And I think that's sometimes because we're doing the right things or we're trying to do the right things. Maybe, it's not perfect, but I do believe that the more that we show up, the more together that we show up and say that we are not standing for this, the more powerful it is. And yeah, there's some lines being drawn in the sand, and we have to make some hard choices. But if folks, and y'all are I hear Synovia when she talk, well, yeah, my sister's over here doing this and she's over here doing that, and like y'all are a big deal. Please use your voice to say something. Say no, we're not having this. We fought a long time to get here, and we still have a lot further to go. And so we can't let them stop us.
Thank you, Kelly.
Can I add something?
Yes, ma'am. I was going to just look at you just and say, Nefertiti.
I was just gonna say that really, and it's broader than just housing, but it's really how we show up about everything. And I think we often think that we're going to get to this point when we don't have to do this work, right? So we struggle, we fought, and then everything is going to be peaceful and equitable, and we'll be in this utopia. It ain't gonna happen. I mean, if you look at the history of this country, but the history of the world, and what I am learning, because I really thought, especially when I was younger and in college, like I thought my work would someday create a different reality than what we see. But I realized that this fight towards creating a just world, a just society, is something that is continuous. And what we're doing is passing the baton, because there's never a point when you think you've gotten to a point where something is good or you have a victory. There's another plan or scheme to undo everything that you've done. And I know it seems like and I've been in groups. I spoke at the African American Leadership Institute, and I know one of the things they said we're tired. And I get that. Then maybe you finish your course of the race. So then let's pass it on. And we have to prepare the next generation. And younger people, many of them understand these issues and can articulate the issues in ways that are so amazing. Like they talk above me. I don't even understand often how they talk about these issues. But we have to realize that the fight for justice is not a single victory. It's this ongoing fight to keep pressing against the pressure of opposition and oppression that would only have a few people in society access and have opportunity, right? So it's this ongoing struggle, I think. And I'll finally say, my father, he had to tell me to relax a little bit, right? Relax and have fun. He said, I thought this was all going to be over in the 60s. He said, we thought we were going to have a revolution in the 60s. And it didn't happen. It didn't come, right? So it is this ongoing fight for justice where we're passing on the baton, unfortunately, because we're human beings and we're all flawed. And it's the systems that we have created that doesn't want everybody to enjoy everything in a way that I feel that we should have access to as in terms of our God-given rights as a human being in this society.
Yeah, you all brought up another interesting point, and I know we're gonna try to shift now because we're getting some questions about home ownership. I found it very interesting that we're kind of have a lot of focus. There's folks out there that advocate for renting and having Black and brown folks in the community just consistent renting. And I'm thinking about obviously the number of programs and services that we're offering on the rental side, but we have to again see home ownership as as one of those tools of equity, in my Kelly Coleman's voice, a tool of equity. And so it's amazing to me that there's so many people out there that are on the brink. There's a lot of stereotypes and this misinformation about I cannot own a home. And there's all these, folks that are right at the cuff, but not understanding about the opportunities that exist out there for home ownership possibilities. We have a comment in the Q&A that the Austin Black real estate professionals would love to partner. And there's folks out there all the time who want to partner and help. And there's so many Black realtors out there that are specifically, I call them little soldiers, out there in the war zone, trying to help our Black and brown families and individuals to home ownership. So let's switch a little bit and focus. There's some folks out here that are really wanting to figure out how the heck, look, if I pay $1,700 or $2,400 in rent to somebody else, I can surely pay it towards something I can own and build equity in and stability for my family for generations to come. So Greg, I'm going to address this question to you first. Being in the organization that you're involved in and the partnerships, for example, that you have with the Austin Urban League, can you spit out for the folks out here who are looking for information, just first general contact, what are some resources, who are some organizations out there that can help me because I'm lost, I'm trying to figure out how to get in the home ownership game? Any nuggets?
Okay, thanks for that question there. First of all, I think, Urban League is a really good start because they do have financial literacy counseling. And then there's also, there's other organizations out there. I forget the name. I just remember her name, which was Joyce McDonald. She assists many folks in developing, preparing them to become homeowners. I was meeting with a couple of gentlemen a couple of months ago that wants to cultivate, as I call cultivate homeowners, prepare them for that home ownership, going through literacy, cleaning up their credit, showing them the basic things of maintaining a home. Housing here in Austin has gotten extremely expensive. And we're having to get real creative with the tools that we use. For example, what I'm having to do to be able to make home, to sell an affordable house to a person at 80% of the median family income is starting to create these community land trusts. These community land trusts where you take the land out of the equation for that homeowner, because the house is so expensive. And when you throw in the taxes, many situations, the real estate taxes just on the land disqualifies someone, throws them out of that bracket for affording that house. So looking at tools such as creating a community land trust, taking advantage of the city's also, which called homeownership, this OHDA program, which is homeownership for developers. Well, we're providing some subsidy to bring that cost down, but the city has their own restrictions in terms of what they would allocate per unit. I would think that this equity tool that Kelly's been talking about, I haven't seen them use that in a situation like this, which would be great because in certain situations you need greater subsidy. So, you know, we're building houses, we're creating those community land trusts, but you just got to look at those tools for me as a developer on what it takes to make the numbers work. Nefertiti joked a moment ago about me. I always said I need to make money, make a profit. But in some situations, we really got to look at what is it going to take to produce a good product and a good product for that homeowner. Because I want to build something that I feel comfortable living in, not just putting up a square 4 walls with a couple of bedrooms. I'll stop there.
So is the Colony Park, can you tell people about it? I know we've sprinkled in there, and I know recently with the Colony Park area, there's been a lot of discussion on it, and it's an affordable housing area project for you. Can you tell folks a little bit about the Colony Park effort and how they may be able to take advantage of that?
Well, first of all, the Colony Park, the 200 acres, as I mentioned earlier, is being developed by the Catalyst Group. My understanding, 25% of those units that's going to be developed will be made as affordable housing. Project specifically that I'm working on with Equidad, which is another nonprofit, we're developing at least 3 homeownership housing on a lot. Again, taking advantage of all the tools that are available for us, such as the Affordability Unlock Ordinance, which allows us to put additional units, create a little bit more density. We're going to take advantage of the Smart Housing Ordinance, where we can get reduced fees, permitting fees. And we're also going to take advantage of the down payment assistance programs the city offer, in addition to the Affordability Unlock, the Project Connect acquisition dollars. To all of those tools and resources will go in to develop these 3 units that we're looking at selling to folks at 80% of median family income. We anticipate those being complete within the next 18 to 24 months.
Okay, Ms. Nefertiti, Toolbox, can you offer some guidance? Like I said, I know we have several folks here looking for information on home ownership, in particular home ownership programs. And I think what is needed, there seems to be this huge gap between, hey, I think everybody knows they have to have good credit, right? And I think everybody knows they got to have a down payment. But there are programs out there that will walk you through what that process is, link you to realtors and financial institutions. Can you talk a little bit about some of the city's programs that are available?
I'm going to say this. I actually can't, but I'm going to give you some other tools and tips. I put some of them in the chat. The home assistance program is under another area. We do have one for the city of Austin. And then there are others. I put a national one in the chat as well. And this is what I wanted to say. There's a couple of things that I think are important for those who are seeking home ownership opportunities. You actually need a team. So that's what I was going to say. You actually need a team. No one should go into this process by themselves, even if you bought a home before. It's working on your credit, but I'm going to tell you this. Also, not being fearful of thinking you can't buy it because your credit is not the best, right? But your credit is important, but that's not the only determining factor. You need a great realtor. Don't get a good realtor. Don't get a good realtor. Get a great realtor. And I'm glad there are realtors on this call, but you need someone who will look out for your best interest when buying a home. Don't rush. Don't think that there is not a home for you when you have to get something now. I had to learn that lesson myself. But you also need, and there's tons of resources available. But what I think some people are trying to do this by themselves, and it can be overwhelming. The classes, I put NACA in there. I would encourage people to start on that website, go through their trainings and just become familiar. You don't have to be an expert, just get familiar with the process and find your team and your real estate agent and whoever is going to do the financing for you. I put a couple of, and I'm going to say this, I think we need to, as a city, and I think really not as a city, as a community, as Black people, we should start changing the narrative around homeownership and pushing that as an option, because I feel like it's not, I could be wrong. I feel like it's not discussed as much as an option. And again, I think we should explore all options so that people can decide what they want for themselves and when they want it. But there is not, to me, a huge conversation around Black homeownership. It might be challenging in Austin, right? Because of the cost. I'm not saying it's impossible. And so many of us are looking in other areas, Pflugerville, Round Rock, Manor, and that might be the case. I feel like I don't want to personalize this. I will say I have a number of women who are calling me and asking for advice. And so I'm giving them and sharing my personal advice and experience. And I will tell you, you guys, I've lived in every single situation you can think of, from renting to owning to losing homes, like everything in between, right? So, but I feel we are not talking about it enough. And so I've told these women, I am glad you're calling me, and I'm happy to answer the questions that they have had about, and some of these women are professional women who, and I think there's an embarrassment because people think, oh, I should know this. And it's okay that we don't know everything. So I think we need to just start to, we as a community, not push homeownership, talk about it more, both the pros and the cons, so that, and share resources with people so that when they are ready, they can make a decision that makes sense for them, their family, and their financial situation, right? And I'm going to, so I've listed BCL in there. I've listed the City of Austin's homeownership program, and then I also listed NACA's, but there's Better Mortgage. I don't want to push any one organization, but Better Mortgage, it's an online site that people can go and see what is their buying power, right? It's very quick and easy. If a person is interested, go and check it out and see, what could I buy in this current market? And then say, talk to your financial advisor. Is this a good time to buy with interest rates the way they are, right? And so there's so many things that are important: timing, interest rates, your down payment that you have. And then also, but I will say, don't say it's not a good time, because there are also a lot of incentives that new developers are offering, because few people are not purchasing now. So many developers are offering upgrades. Many developers are offering a portion of your down payment assistance. They're paying it for you. So there's so many options, and a person, I think, get the advice to see what will put me in the best situation in terms of where I am financially, to purchase a home at this time.
Thanks, Nefertiti. I want to stop for a second because I do know this, a couple people may not be getting the chats. And so there are some nuggets here in the chat, especially that Nefertiti, and I know that Kelly is dropping a couple in. It's the National Home Ownership Program. And I know we've been talking a lot about Austin, but home ownership obviously have issues, and there are need around the country. In other areas, Houston, Dallas area, but the National Home Ownership Program, www.naca.com, is a excellent resource. And here in Austin, has an excellent resource with the Austin Home Ownership Program. And so I'm hoping everyone can see these particular chats, because these resources, they've been coming in. I don't know how y'all are managing to type in chat. I can't even get in one. But I do know that there was a comment from Joanna, who's with the Black Realtors Association. And I do see several realtors on here. And I will tell you, I can tell you from my own experience that, having an excellent realtor that is connected and understand these programs that are out here. Maybe Synovia, our next webinar could be just literally getting someone to sit down on the webinar. Here's the application. Here's where you here's the calculator, and put together a home ownership program that walks people through the process, but also connect them to those key resources. Like you said, your team. It's not just you going out here, and you need to educate yourself, but you got to get connected to realtors who are connected to programs, and also those lending institutions. And so I want to stop and see, I know people do you all know any of the lenders out there that have good programs? And I want to see if someone can type in the Austin Black Realtors Association, because I think that would be an awesome way to help and get people connected to at least some realtors that have some information. I see a few here on our call. But are there like other, I know we mentioned the Urban League, and Synovia gave me the thumbs up where I volunteered her to do a workshop specific on home ownership. But is there like any other resources out there, like lending and tools and things like that will be helpful before I open up for Q&A for our attendees?
I would just say one thing about the lending, and particularly when I was talking about these community land trusts that we're having to create to be able to sell these units to individuals, is that that's another tool, is finding a bank that will lend to a community land trust home, because this is where the land is not sold to the individual, only the improvements is. And so the bank would normally, the bank typically does the land and the improvement as one loan, but it's a different product when you're looking at just lending for the improvements and not the land. And so that's a challenge in finding banks that have that product.
Okay. And I also want to speak a little bit to people who are out there who actually have homes and want to keep homes up to shape, up to code. Please look on the City of Austin's website. There's different home improvements, particularly in our Austin Energy area. They have a weatherization program. Austin Energy that will actually go in and assist with windows and doors and AC units. They also offer different rebates and things like that for homeowners. So for not just for people who looking, we're trying to help a broad spectrum and put a lot of information out there from everybody who's on every spectrum of the housing area. So please go out. I think, Synovia, if you could put in the link to the Austin Energy website that has the weatherization programs and energy efficient programs that people can take advantage of. I know there's even programs where people come in One of you very versed community resource people may know of this, where they actually come in and remodel for the elderly, making their homes with improvements for them to live, because we try to keep our elderly in their homes. So those are some other programs. Look at all this information in the chat. I appreciate that. I saw a question in the chat, and there's so much information coming through, I cannot find it. I think it was someone was asking about if you can explain, let's see, if you can explain information on what a community trust is, I believe, the community land trust.
Sure, I can explain that. It's a situation where the land is owned by the developer, or for in our situation would be owned by the Austin Revitalization Authority. And what we'll do is we will sell the improvement to the individual, and they would not own the lot. We'll actually rent the lot for them for some period of time in perpetuity, whatever it takes. And us as a nonprofit, there's state law that states that we would pay taxes on it based on the revenue that's being generated from the land. And if you not generate no more than 600 or $1,000 a year for the land, then the taxes on that is going to be extremely low. And that's how you make that piece affordable for the family, because it'd be less than. And in some situations where I've dealt with a person that could qualify to buy the improvement, but when you threw in the land in terms of taxes, the taxes on the land was greater than the mortgage on the house.
Wow. All right. Well, thank you all so much. What I like to do is just offer our panelists at least 1 minute to just kind of summarize and to see if there's something that they have burning in their heart to say, information to provide. And so we'll take a minute from that. And please, if you all have questions, you can still put those in the chat in our following moments. And I'm hoping we can, everyone is getting information from the chat, Austin Area Urban League, home repair programs. There's a lot of things that is getting put in this chat that I'm hoping that we are able to capture. But again, I want to go to our panelists and offer a final just commentary. I will start with you, Kelly, the queen over here, my equity queen, and then we'll just go from Greg back to Nefertiti with some closing remarks.
Great, thank you, Dr. Saldana. I wanted to answer a question that went unanswered in the chat about Rosewood and what happened to the families there and what's going to happen. It's being renovated right now, and I think they're trying to keep some of the historical structures. I think the outside of a few of the buildings, and I read somewhere that families were either placed in another site, HACA site, or they were given vouchers and placed other places. It's not super clear, but from what I've seen and what I've heard, that site is going to look similar to what we saw with Chalmers Courts. And okay. So we'll see, what happens and if those families will be able to come back once the site has been renewed. I've seen once before, I don't remember if y'all remember Rio Lotto used to be on 51st Street. And they demolished that one as well. And it was a lot harder to get people into housing after that than we initially thought, because of how hard it is to get people, landlords right now, to take vouchers because of how intense the market is. And so it's that's what I've been told. That's what I've heard. That's what I've read, is that folks were placed in other sites. And so that was the first thing I wanted to say, because I promised that I would answer that question to the best of my ability. There's a lot of history in that site too. If you take time to research that, it was a gathering place for African Americans before it became public housing. So anyway.
If I can just add though, and because it is a lot of very deep history, and this speaks to why our work is so important. That site was purchased by formerly enslaved people, right? They pooled their money together to purchase that site, and then it was taken through eminent domain later to build the first segregated federally funded housing project, right? And so, yeah, it's a very complex history with Black people and land and space in this country. And then this is why, though, I will say, and I'm going to go, I know Kelly isn't finished with her thought, but we can't forget that history. And then we have to be informed. And we have to reach out to get the resources we need to protect home ownership, to protect land ownership. And it is not always an easy struggle.
It's not going to be. That's where I think a lot of the sort of fights are right now, is land use and housing, and land ownership and control. We see we're being sort of things are happening on all fronts, right? Education is one of those as well, but the education system and how that's connected to land and taxes and land value, right? We can talk about policing. How is that connected to land, neighborhoods, value that's perceived, right? All of it. So it's very important. Just think about it too, like Austin as a community and space, right? I remember when housing had started to do the right to return work, and people were like, well, what are we returning to? And so those are questions that I think are being answered, because people are, specifically Black folks, are creating spaces all the time. And I think that we have to work together to make sure that that we're benefiting from all of the wealth and success that's available to us in Austin. And that we need to interrogate the connection that wealth and success has to Black suffering and poverty.
Yes, ma'am. Greg?
Well, thank you. I want to touch on a couple of things, just real quickly. What Kelly was talking about, the right to return. There's some arguments about what took place in East Austin, particularly during the civil rights movements, and affirmative action got adopted. There was many folks left the area because they had the right to go elsewhere, and they wanted to be pioneers and go and live elsewhere. So the question is, there might be a conversation that some might want to return. I would question, what percentage of that wants to return versus those that got out and say, I don't want to go back. because I did get out, with the fact of getting out of a particular environment. Secondly is we've been talking about housing, and it's important to understand we've been talking about a number of different types of housing. And when I was working for the housing department, and Zenobia may remember this, we had a theme that was called the continuum of housing. The continuum of housing is a progression from home ownership from homelessness all the way to home ownership. And there's different areas where they are renters and there are home ownership, and different levels of transitional housing. Homelessness, transitional housing, you got your rental, and you got your home ownership. And there's probably some other nuances associated with that. With that said, we've been talking about all of those. Some folks that they're only good, bad, or indifferent can only be in the rental market. There are those folks that can afford to buy the house, have the tools, have enough foundation to get them into that house. And there's other folks that should be in the homeownership situation. So we gotta be real and address all of those continuum of housing services. And I appreciate your organization, the Deltas, in making this a focus. But I like the theme of continuum of housing because it addresses not only the home ownership and the rental, but the homeless and the transitional that need that. And then I would just say in closing with this, I am honored like no one's business to be part of this panel of women I really appreciate the invite here, being a part of it. I just realized I'm the only man on the panel. And then I started looking at the guests. I might be the only man on the call. But I do thank you for giving me that opportunity to speak to you guys and be a part of this program.
Thank you, Greg. As always, you are in good company, as you can see.
Absolutely.
Nefertiti.
Thank you. I echo Greg. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I'm excited that you guys are hosting these workshops even throughout next week. So thank you. I will say, I think for me, one of the most important things that I'd like to emphasize is that we continue to work towards getting housing options that work for us. And I mean us both individually and collectively. Like, you have to determine what makes sense for you and your family and your community, but be able to determine that. And I think what I'd like to see is us considering a variety of homeownership options and opportunities, being in safe communities and communities where you feel affirmed and where you feel that your children can thrive. It's imperative, it's crucial. And so I just like to, resources are available. We will continue to do what we can, and I will continue to do what I can in my space to expand opportunities for families to be safe and remain in their homes, even in spite of the many challenges that continue to exist. But I'll just share this in closing. One of the things that I did see when we led the emergency rent assistance programs during COVID, there was so many people, houses, individuals of one that needed rental assistance. And there's something that we haven't really talked about that. And I don't mean on this panel, but I mean cities across the country. And what that lets me know is what we already know. Where there's collective unity and strength and people striving together, they're more housing stable, right? They can face the various challenges of life. To me, that's what I took away from it. But I would just like to encourage us, number one, to explore housing options that work for you, and don't let any other people try to decide or determine what you need for your family to be successful and thrive in these spaces. So thank you.
Amen. Thank you so much to each of our panelists. At this time, I want to say thank you all for being in such great company. This has been a learning experience for me. I again want to encourage those on the call, particularly who are needing assistance, to try to key into the links in our chat, and I will do our very best. Delta, we'll try to see if we can figure out if we can put those links on our website, but there's been a number of nuggets that have been offered to include programs with our Austin Urban League. I know, again, the Austin Black Realtors is having some sessions on next week that will be also helpful for those for home ownership. And so at this time, I've seen our beautiful president hop on the call. She is going to close us out. I want to remind those who are still on the call to please complete the survey. And then if you get an email from us, again, as an attendee, perhaps with the resources and also with the link to the survey, we would really appreciate your feedback and giving us on this panel and either future options. So at this time, President Robin Blackman of the Austin Alumni Chapter.
Thank you, Dr. Saldana, and thank you to each of our panelists for sharing your wealth of knowledge. And as always, to our co-chairs for economic development, Sarah Sinovia Holt-Rab and Sarah Avis Gibson. We have had a lot of healthy discussions around economic development this year, but I got to tell you, this one was full of, as we used to call in the audit world, low-hanging fruit. There's still a lot of work to be done. And so in my mind, as I listen to each of you and I listen to the challenges, the solutions that you all have provided, my mind goes to, so now what do we do, Delta Sigma Theta, to become more a part of the solution? We're in the process of planning our calendar year for next year. And I think this is one of those things that I say, what do we need to do to get our hands dirty, right? How do we get out there and help them? Having, one of the things, I don't know that we fully talked about it this morning, that I think, Greg, you said, I'm trying to quote your term, I think you said we are property wealth, but knowledge poor. Is that how you say that?
Land rich, knowledge poor.
Thank you. Land rich and knowledge poor. And what comes to my mind historically in our communities is when we lose loved ones, then we're fighting over property. And because we haven't planned on how to hold on to it. We haven't planned on how to make it work for generational wealth for our families. And that's what I see in East Austin. I can go over there week after week and I see a different property up. And I'm like, what happened? And so I would love to, and we don't, not this morning, but love to have a conversation and some action behind how do we educate our families on, number one, how to keep our family property, because that is where we start with that. But we get to fighting about a quarter and a nickel and a dime, and everybody walks away from the table with $100, and somebody takes that property and becomes worth $1 million for them. So I just want to say thank you for that. And thank you for what you shared this morning. And I would definitely challenge our co-chairs to say, hey, what do we do next to really get our hands dirty and help the people in this community? This has been a great morning, time well spent. And I just want to again say thank you. Thank you to our participants for taking out the time this morning and Saturday morning. And I wish you all a happy Easter weekend. Thank you.
I think tech team, you can start recording.
Okay, guys, y'all take care. Have a great weekend.
Thank